There are moments in life when the air itself feels charged with meaning, when circumstances whisper instead of shout, and something within you stirs, a quiet sense that the ordinary has become sacred ground. It is not coincidence, it is not chance, it is God trying to get your attention. He often speaks, not in the thunder, but in the still, small voice that trembles beneath the noise of your busy thoughts. Yet how often we drown him out, mistaking divine interruption for inconvenience and spiritual direction for discomfort. We keep scrolling, planning, chasing, while heaven gently knocks, saying, "Look here. This is for you." God does not compete for your attention like the world does. He does not shout above the noise of your distractions. He waits until your heart is quiet enough to hear. But when life shakes, when plans collapse, relationships break, or dreams dissolve, he allows the cracks not to destroy you, but to let his light in. Sometimes the unanswered prayer, the delay, the rejection, is not punishment, but redirection. What if the very thing you're resisting is the path he's using to rescue you? What if the silence you fear is the space he's using to speak? His methods may unsettle you, but his motives never change, to awaken your soul to something eternal, something only found when you stop running and start listening. You see, God rarely writes messages in the clouds. He writes them in the circumstances of your days. A door that won't open, a friend who says the exact words your heart needed, a recurring thought you can't shake. These are not random echoes. They are divine fingerprints. Yet we prefer logic to faith, explanation to revelation. We demand proof before obedience, while heaven waits for surrender before understanding. God's signs are often subtle because he seeks not to overwhelm your mind, but to awaken your heart. He knows that truth shouted at the unwilling becomes noise, but truth whispered to the seeking becomes transformation. So if you feel restless lately, if the things that once satisfied now feel empty, pay attention. That holy unease might not be failure, it might be a calling. The emptiness you feel is not a void to fill, but a signal to listen. Perhaps God is saying, "Stop, be still, I am speaking." When he wants your attention, he will shake what you depend on until your dependence returns to him. The question is not whether he is speaking. The question is whether you are listening. The signs are not hidden. They are all around you, woven through your struggles, echoing through your quiet moments, waiting for you to notice that heaven has been calling your name all along. God often disrupts your comfort to awaken your calling. God often disrupts your comfort to awaken your calling, because comfort, though pleasant, can become the quietest form of captivity. When everything feels predictable, when routines replace reflection, and when success numbs the need for surrender, God steps in, not to destroy what you have built, but to rebuild what you have forgotten. He loves you too deeply to let you settle for a life that feels safe but lacks purpose. The moments that shake you, the plans that fall apart, the seasons that feel like loss are not divine punishments. They are divine wake-up calls. For God knows that if he left you undisturbed, you might mistake ease for peace and convenience for calling. So he disrupts not in cruelty, but in compassion, pulling down walls you have built around your faith, so you might finally see the horizon of his will. Every storm, every disappointment, every delay has a divine thread woven through it, a message whispering that there is more to your story than survival. When God calls, he rarely does it from the comfort of the familiar. Abraham was called to leave his land, Moses to confront Pharaoh, Peter to step out of the boat. None were called in comfort, yet all discovered purpose in obedience. The same pattern remains. When God shakes your foundation, it is not to leave you homeless, but to lead you to higher ground. He knows you cannot grow where you refuse to move, and so he disturbs your still waters until faith replaces fear. You may not understand why doors close, why people change, or why the future feels uncertain. But heaven's disruptions are precise. They touch only what must be shifted for destiny to unfold. The truth is, divine calling rarely feels comfortable because it awakens you to realities your comfort had kept hidden. You begin to sense a hunger that success cannot satisfy, a longing that routine cannot fill. That is the sound of purpose stirring within you. God uses discomfort as the language of transformation, speaking through what unsettles you until you realize that the ground shaking beneath you is not meant to bury you, but to break open new beginnings. Every disruption becomes a divine invitation to trust Him beyond understanding, to see that what feels like loss is often love in disguise, calling you to the place where faith becomes sight, and comfort gives way to calling. Divine silence is never absence. It's preparation for revelation. Divine silence is never absence. It's preparation for revelation, for in the quiet spaces where God seems farthest away, He is often working most deeply within you. Silence is not neglect, it is nurturing. It is the sacred pause between promise and fulfillment, the unseen shaping of your soul before the unveiling of His plan. When heaven seems still, it is not because you've been forgotten, but because something within you is being refined to hold what you have prayed for. God's silence is His workshop, where your faith is stretched, your patience is tested, and your trust is purified. The absence of His voice is not the absence of His hand. While you wait, He is aligning circumstances, shifting hearts, and preparing paths that your eyes cannot yet see. In the stillness, He is teaching you that faith is not built on feelings, but on trust. Anyone can believe when the voice of God is loud, but true faith is born in the moments when He whispers nothing at all. The silence is not punishment, it is the space where dependency grows. God knows that constant communication would make you rely on His voice, not His nature. So He hides His voice for a time to reveal His character through your waiting. He wants you to believe, not because you hear Him every moment, but because you know Him deeply enough to stay even when you don't. The silence is where love matures, where belief becomes conviction, and where faith learns endurance. If you listen closely in those silent seasons, you'll realize that God has been speaking all along, just not in the way you expected. His silence is filled with subtle signs, small mercies, and quiet confirmations that whisper, "I am here." The delay you fear is often the preparation you need. He is building strength in your surrender, depth in your devotion, and vision in your waiting. The silence refines your hearing so that when His voice returns, you recognize it instantly, not as a stranger's call, but as the sound of your shepherd's heart. What feels like divine distance is actually divine design, shaping your soul for a revelation that words alone could never give. The signs you're ignoring are the very answers you've been praying for. The signs you're ignoring are the very answers you've been praying for, because God often wraps revelation in the ordinary and hides direction inside what feels inconvenient. We expect thunder, visions, and dramatic encounters, yet heaven often whispers through the quiet details of our days. The problem is not that God isn't speaking, it's that we've grown too distracted to notice. He answers through patterns, timing, interruptions, and even through people we overlook. The delay that frustrates you might be His way of protecting you from a path not meant for you. The conversation you almost dismissed might carry the confirmation you've been asking for. God's answers are rarely loud because He desires intimacy, not spectacle. When He wants to guide you, He does it in a way that requires stillness to perceive, humility to accept, and faith to obey. We often pray for clarity, yet ignore the clues already shining before us. We say we want His will, but resist anything that challenges our plans. What if the closed door you resent is His mercy? What if the opportunity that didn't come through is His way of redirecting you towards something greater? Heaven rarely answers in straight lines. It teaches in circles, waiting for you to see what you keep walking past. God will never stop sending signs, but He will not force you to see them. Revelation demands awareness, and awareness begins when you slow down enough to listen with your spirit, not just your eyes. When you start to notice the divine in the ordinary, the way peace follows certain decisions, the way unease accompanies others, you begin to realize that the language of heaven is often emotional before it is visible. God speaks through your restlessness as much as through your relief. The repetition of a verse, a dream that lingers, a phrase that keeps returning to your heart. These are not coincidences, they are invitations. He is answering you not in new information, but in familiar reminders, urging you to connect what you're hearing with what you've already prayed for. The signs are not far away. They are right where you are, waiting for recognition. What feels like delay may be discovery, and what feels like silence may be the sound of God saying, "Look again. You've already received your answer.